friends, nice to be with you again. My name is Miss Marissa. If you are new here, my goal is to help students learn by empowering teachers, parents, and students themselves. Today we are going to work through the writing process in kindergarten. I remember when I first became a kindergarten teacher, I was absolutely terrified of working through the writing process with my students who pretty much couldn't hold a pencil, they couldn't stay awake all day. I had no idea what I was doing. So I hope this video helps you out. Before we really dive into the writing process steps, I want to give you a few other tips. First, I tend to start with the opinion piece in the beginning of the year, mostly because it requires the least amount of content up front. Typically, students at that age can respond to the question, my favorite is, or I like, I don't like. So I usually start with opinion just because it's the easiest way to ease into the writing process. Next, students have a hard time organizing themselves at that age, especially if they have a lot of loose papers or loose drawings. So my advice is to help them get organized with a binder, a spiral notebook, something like that, especially if you're going to be working through this process for a number of weeks, which it typically takes to get through the writing process. So help them get organized. Trust me, you're just helping yourself as well. And last, don't feel like you have to teach everything up front. I teach as I go, especially the craft of writing. I don't do it all before we begin. I do it as I go. Okay, let's dive into the writing process step 1, which is pre-writing. Pre-writing includes brainstorming, planning, and outlining. Outlining is typically not really applicable to kindergarten students, so let's just put that aside and focus on the other two. First of all, pre-writing can take a really different amount of time depending on what your prompt or topic is for your student. So for example, if you're working on informative writing, then it could take a much longer time if you are giving them all of the information beforehand. So for example, if you want students to work on or write about long ago versus now, you're going to have to provide all of that content before they write, or a science project, you're going to have to provide all that before they write. Whereas if they're doing narrative or opinion writing, they typically have that story or that opinion already in their own mind, and we just have to help them focus. So brainstorming is really just having discussions about the topic. So starting to decide what your student wants to write about. They can fill out, you can do a lot of activities in class, they can fill out paperwork, worksheets, things like that, to decide and start to narrow down what they want their topic, their writing piece to be about. They can also start to decide on which details they want to include. So for example, my favorite animal, they have to decide which things they like about their animal and have to start narrowing down and making decisions about that. That is all part of pre-writing. The second step in the writing process is drafting. Drafting is just when they get their ideas down on paper. Before you draft, I highly recommend you practice saying your writing out loud first. So have your students pair up with a partner and have them just talk out what they want to write. And I really encourage my students only say the words you want to write down. I find that typically students talk for a long time because they have a lot to say, we all know, but then I stop them and say, can you write all of that? And they are like, no, I can't. So we really want to encourage students, just say the words that you want to write down. I like horses, period. They are my favorite, period. So fewer words is what I recommend in this space, in this step of the writing process. So drafting also looks really different in kindergarten because they're allowed to draw, dictate, and write, but we do want to encourage that drawing, that dictation, or that writing. The third step in the writing process is revising. Revising to me is maybe the most important step in the writing process, and really what it is just improving your overall writing content. How do we make our writing better? It's a difficult step at every level. At upper grades, it looks kind of like expanding your sentences, using higher level vocabulary, maybe organizing things a bit different, moving sentences around, improving your topic sentence, that kind of thing. But of course, that's different in kindergarten. In kindergarten, the way I have my students improve their writing are a few things. First, I ask them to add details to their drawing. I say, can you add a background? Can you add a few colors? Is there any other details you can add to this drawing? Second, I teach them about labels. So this is a place again, I said I don't teach everything up front. This is where I teach about labeling. So I work on labeling for a few days, and then I ask students to go ahead and add that into their picture, into their writing, drawing work. And lastly, I ask students if they can add any other sentence details. So because this works at this age, because they don't really write conclusions, of course, yet in kindergarten, so they can still add another piece of detail or information. For example, they can add another reason why blank is their favorite thing, or another little fact that they learned about whatever they're writing about in science or something like that. So that's how I encourage revision at this age. The fourth step in the writing process is editing. Now, I think it's really easy to confuse editing and revision. Revision is much more important. Editing is just fixing your mechanical errors. Now, that is a little bit more important in kindergarten because they make a lot more mechanical errors. So mechanical errors are the basics: punctuation, capitalization, finger space, word wall, things that like words they should be spelling correctly. Those are examples of mechanical errors. So it's a little bit tedious to have students do this. I usually make them do it sentence by sentence so they don't get overwhelmed or exhausted. But this is also a great place to review what a sentence needs. I'm sure you've done that earlier in the year, but you review what a sentence needs. It needs a capital letter, finger spacing, ending punctuation, and this is a great place to review that. I also really encourage students here to use our word wall or any type of anchor posters, anchor charts you have for spelling words up in your classroom. Definitely they should be using those here in this step to edit their work. The fifth and final step of the writing process is publishing. Congratulations, you made it. Publishing looks different in kindergarten again because the standards allow students to draw, dictate, and write. Now, depending on the student or the time of year, I don't always require students to have writing in their final product. They're allowed to draw and or dictate as well as write. Especially students who are transitional kinder or English language learners, writing is really difficult at this age, so it's okay if they are just drawing and dictating to me. I always have a publishing party so that students feel ownership of their work. I invite parents to come in and view their work. I think that's really exciting part at any grade level, but especially at kindergarten. One of the things I struggle with in publishing is, do I force students to redo everything? So students have already written their draft, they've already revised and edited and added details. That is really up to you. It depends on how organized, how clean their final draft looks, but I typically do, yes, ask students to create a final product, a final published product that is neat and clean and complete. I also allow them, students who are maybe a little bit advanced, to do this on the computer, and they absolutely love that, of course. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of look at publishing in kindergarten, but congratulations, you've done it. I hope this video really helps you work through the writing process in kindergarten. Keep working smart, teachers.